Focus getting frame. I was actually looking for a different tweeter on Twitter. This guy who's arguing with kind of everyone in Comicsgate. This guy's wearing a brown jacket and a yellow shirt. It's kind of a weird. It's a weird look, kind of like a, I don't know, like a carnival barker. Like you should have a flower that squirts water or something like this. But when I punched in Comicsgate in the search engine, this is the first tweet that came up. This guy, Comicsgate posting their L's. He's not firing on all 8 cylinders. There's something off with him, and there's something off with a lot of SGWs in general, and with anti-Comicsgate people. I mean, some of these people have organic issues, because this guy posts L's, and even, it doesn't matter if you're pro-Comicsgate, not anti-Comicsgate, or neutral. Even people who are pretty neutral will look at some of these guys' L's, and they in his comments they go, I don't understand how the thing you're posting is an L. It doesn't. Some of the things they just don't make sense. This guy, I don't know who this kid is, drew a picture, a fanfic of Cyberfrog. It's like it's a fine drawing. It's someone who's not. They're an artist of some sort. They're not a masterclass artist. They're several years away from that. Give tips. It's like, well, tips, just keep drawing every day for the rest of your life, and eventually, keep working on anatomy, I guess, and eventually you'll get better. It's not like, but it's not something you'd make fun of. It's not an L. Like he's doing some things right with the color, and the silver reflection is working pretty well. It's just not. It's just like, yeah, okay, this is somebody who's not a complete beginner, but who's somebody's at the beginning. It's not a win. It's not an L. It's just somebody who's an artist who's becoming better of an artist. Who's going to making all kinds of mistakes. This is like, it's not Comicsgate posting an L. It's somebody who's drawing a character of a figure that they thought was kind of a cool character. And here's the thing with Cyberfrog, is even if you weren't such a fan of the story, which, like I would have liked to have seen him get a writer to do it. You can't knock the art and the color that went into Cyberfrog. Like, it would have been killer if he had Chuck Dixon do it, or somebody else. Like, he's an okay writer for sure. Probably better than an okay writer, but like Chuck Dixon, oh God, it would have just been so freaking awesome. But the thing is, even without caring about the story, you can, if you're into the art, you can look at the art and like, yeah, this is all kinds of dope. And so somebody, like, you can not like EVS or like EVS or not even give two shits about the guy. You can look at the art and go like, oh, this is a really cool anthropomorphic. You've got a frog and technology. It's a weird combination. It's something that's probably, if you're an artist, I can't draw a lick, but it's probably something that's fun to draw. So it's like, it's not that deep. Why would you hold this as an L? And this guy's got you can scroll to his account, which it also will give you a long list of people that you should block, which is something I wouldn't have said a few years ago. But that's a lot of these people, like, there's just no point engaging with these people. Are friggin' out of their mind nuts. So he's posting these Comicsgate L things, and like, it's to the point where some of them don't even make sense. You realize, like, this guy's got, he's got a screw loose. He's not all there. Even people on the left are going through this, and I think you can kind of read the thought bubble over their head, like, oh, this guy's not playing with a full deck, is he? And the funny thing about the internet is that when you're like, I don't know, I want to say like a passive, when you're on the internet and you're a part of something and you're reading tweets and watching videos, it's like you have one view of how the sausage is made. But then, even in some way, as making a very small channel, I see how the sausage is made from the other side of it. And what it has taught me is that the internet's, it's a door to the whole world, and there's a lot of deeply disturbed people on the internet, and you don't want to encourage people who might not be playing with a full deck. Just treat them as gently as possible. You don't need to pick fights with everybody. You don't need to slam dunk on everybody, especially people who, I'm not saying these people are writing names on bullets, but you certainly don't want to needlessly antagonize people who are not all there. Because like back in the old days, before cell phones, it's like everyone knew the town crazy, but the town crazy was kind of isolated because they didn't have access to the greater outside. Like before the days of computers and modems, They just didn't have access to a whole lot of things. That's all changed nowadays because everyone has a cell phone and Wi-Fi or a mobile signal, and you can have all kinds of crazy people out there, and they're all on the internet, and they all seem to find these channels. Anyway, so this guy's not playing with the full deck. The thing is, this video, what made me make this video is it occurred to me, this concept of how do you argue with these anti-comicsgate trolls. And the simple answer is just don't bother. There's that Twitter guy with he's probably seen, if you scroll through Ethan's Twitter feed, you can see him arguing with Ethan, and Ethan's trying to bend over backwards. And he's arguing with a bunch of other people also. And I saw him argue, and I've been on the internet long enough to where you can tell that somebody is, even if, it doesn't matter if they're good or bad or, positive chaos or negative chaos, they're just a problem, a troublemaker. And you just you're just better off blocking these people and moving on. Block them, forget them, move on with your life. You don't need to try to bend over backwards to appease everybody, especially if you kind of get the vibe that they're not playing with the full deck, or if they've got some kind of cognitive impairment or diminished capacity or something like this. Somewhere to the left of the bell curve. The thing is, just don't waste your time arguing with people who are kind of midwits. You're not going to win because they're not really capable of understanding the argument. He was putting forth some bad argument about Colin Kaepernick, and he goes, he's doing stuff like the straw man rephrase the argument. So what you're saying is, saying that people in Comicsgate, we felt that people should not be discriminated against if you're a professional, Mike Miller, Doug Tenaple, EVS, John Malin, whoever the professional Comicsgaters, they were probably working, I'm assuming, in a hostile work environment if they were moderates or right of center, and they didn't feel safe and comfortable in a comic environment of the mainstream comic environment where everyone there is very far left. So they felt like for them it would have been a hostile work environment. So he was trying to draw an analogy between Colin Kaepernick, and the thing is, the reason the analogy fails after a second of thinking about it, you realize because Colin Kaepernick was doing stuff on the clock. He was doing things. He was taking a knee as he was working, as in front of his audience. So it's kind of not the same. It's not a fair analogy to draw, but you also get to realize, with somebody who's willing to draw that analogy, they're kind of not worth arguing with, because they're not really going to understand the whole argument. And anyone who concern trolls or tries to rephrase the argument, the what you're saying type of thing, just block them and move on with your life. You're not going to win them over. You're not going to get their support. They're never going to buy your product. You're not missing out by blocking them. They were never going to support you in any way, shape, or form. They're just going to suck time from you to try to get some personal, just dopamine. Just block them. Don't waste a second of your life with the anti-Comicsgate trolls. There's you can go through this guy Comicsgate posting the L's thing and go through the people who positively comment. Just spend a few minutes, literally make a part of your Twitter timeline is a few minutes a week. I go through and I block these SGWs. It will, because you really only need to block a few hundred of these people. It will save you time and trouble in the long term, and hassle and stress. Anyone who's publicly anti-Comicsgate, if they're so far out about that, you're not going to win them over, because you're not. The mistake in dealing with SGWs is you think I'm going to be a reasonable adult, and if they see that I'm a reasonable adult, we can talk like mature adults, and we can have an argument and a rebuttal. This isn't, you're not wearing wigs and being barristers or something. You're not dealing with reasonable adults. You're dealing with people who are just, kind of developmentally disabled children with access to a cell phone, or a lot of these jokes about participation trophies and childlike brains in adult bodies. That's not really a joke when it's actually happening, where you see a lot of these kind of wine drinking cat ladies and cat men too who are on social media, and you think, okay, they just had a bad day. This one day I talked to them, it's a bad day. Everyone has PMS the one time. So you think, I'll come back to them another day, and you go through your timeline, you realize, oh no, they're just Twitter is just it's like masturbatory hate porn for them or something. They're like, they never have to engage as an adult. Like, listen, I troll a lot on Twitter, and I say a lot of things that are, do I really believe them, or am I saying them? I'm not even going to give examples because they're too base for YouTube, but I will say them as examples to try to get people to think, and it'll be kind of whacked out statements. But if I see this, somebody wants to engage seriously, then I'll stop and I'll respect that the person wants to behave like, okay, we can put aside the troll. They want to behave like an adult and they want honest answers, and they're gonna argue the hierarchy of the points and not start. You drop down the hierarchy and you argue something beyond the probative and relative points, like the ad hominem type of stuff. But if somebody is like, they're starting with ad hominems and then you go through their timeline and it's like that's their whole timeline, well, there's no point in arguing with them. And you look and they're like, oh, this is a 57-year-old adult, and you go through their arguments and they're just like, who's that guy who not the Wendig guy, the Chuck Wendig guy who said you can eat a boot covered in dirt type of thing, and he's like this soylent mouth thing. Like, these kind of guys and girls, they're like in their 50s, and there's something broken in them or missing in them. They never played a team sport, or that's not fair. They never, I don't know exactly what's wrong with them, but the analogy of the participation prize thing is kind of an accurate vibe with these people. Like, they never learned to deal with others because they're in this like far left-wing echo chamber. And maybe that's the better thing about the right, is that we fight amongst each other so often that it's also like fighting and forgiving, which is something the left-wing kind of hasn't managed. And I wouldn't have said this a few years ago. I would have said, hey, try to engage with people, open marketplace of ideas, all that kind of crap. I get on Twitter and off Twitter every 6 months to a year. It is way more toxic than I remember. The anticomicsgate stuff now, I don't know, because if it's the Mark Waid thing settled, it seemed to like there's oxygen just pouring in this engine. Part of it might be the Mark Waid thing settled, and it might also be like, I was thinking, oh, okay, hey, you got Biden in office. Like, the Trump derangement syndrome should finally be going away. It's 2022. Like, your guy won. Trump is gone. He's never coming back. And it's not. It's like it's even worse now than it was when Comicsgate was at its peak. Was that like 2017? I don't remember exactly when Comicsgate started. It's worse now. And I'm not exact. I don't know if these are like a new crop of kids or different, or I can't imagine these people are spurging out since like 2016. Was that when Comicsgate kind of first got off the ground? Or I don't know when the fighting was like really peaked, was in 2017, which is funny. You think like if Zach of 2016-17 tried to come out and do his YouTube channel, he wouldn't be able to do that kind of stuff nowadays. Anyway, and the other thing is, like, Comicsgate now doesn't need the publicity from fighting with SJWs because things are different now. You don't need the stress, but also the platform rules of YouTube are way stricter. Modern YouTube is not what it was a few years ago. In 2016, the right wing and the hard right wing firmly dominated YouTube. And Trump won, and Google didn't want that to happen again, so they literally kicked off like 99% of like further right channels. The thing is, you go, I'm not further right. I'm just kind of a moderate right. It doesn't really matter. It's bad for you. I mean, any censorship is bad for everyone, but it's bad for Comicsgate because right now, in relative terms, Comicsgate and the Phantom Menace, relatively speaking on the spectrum, they're the new far right. Comicsgate is probably okay, but the thing is, you really don't know what Google is going to do. YouTube has become a very shaky platform unless you're an SJW. Like I've been jokingly saying for a while, YouTube really seems to want cat girl videos and girls in yoga pants making like protein shakes and just those kind of like where every video is a reaction video. I forget that girl's name, Sniper Wolf or something. It's like the open mouth, I don't know what they do. It's like clickbait articles, very, very lightweight clickbait articles. My point is, you don't want to fight with SJWs on Twitter because they can mass report your channels and YouTube will block it. Zach of 2016 would not be allowed today. And, back in 2016, if they were mass reporting channels, YouTube would give you a fair shot. Like they would not take the mouse report so seriously. They would investigate it. They wouldn't just start nuking channels. Nowadays, they will, because they've gotten rid of, like, all the far right channels are gone. But then then the somewhat far right channels are gone too, and like they're not asking for receipts. They're just getting rid of channels. Anyone you accuse them of a certain thing. So you're on much, much shakier ground when, relatively speaking, you're the new far right. And like, that's what I've always said about YouTube, is like, if you want to know what's acceptable on YouTube, look to see if people are doing what you're doing. And if they're not, or if every year there's less and less people doing what you're doing, well, then you're not long for the platform, because they're going to kick you off. So for Twitter, spend some time each week and just block all these SJWs. Go through all these people who are having these disingenuous arguments and like petty stuff. And the thing is, they don't know what they're talking about. Why do the characters from Common America, the ComicsGate Coomer webcomic, look identical to characters from... Well, if you know... This guy doesn't know about ComicsGate, or else he wouldn't be saying this. And I did answer him. I explained it to him, and then I realized, like 5 minutes later, I just deleted my tweet, because I was like, I didn't want to get involved with somebody, like, they don't know what they're talking about. And if I get involved, it's just like going to be a back and forth reel. It's like, again, with somebody like this, it's like, just block them and move on with your life. You're not going to be able to win with them, because they're not arguing in good faith. They don't listen to ComicsGate shows, but they hate everybody in ComicsGate. They heard that they're not supposed to like EVS and Richard Meyer, so now everyone is off limits. It's like, there's probably, at its biggest, at the loosest Venn diagram of ComicsGate, there's going to be over 100,000 people who are associated with ComicsGate. There's hundreds of people who actually have channels with, like, I don't know what you want to call a channel, like someone who's regularly making videos and has, over 100 subs. There's hundreds of those channels in CG. So it's just saying, like, everyone is guilty because you don't like Myers and EVS. Like, everyone? Would you do that to any other group of people, or would you ask for receipts, or you wouldn't do that, where it's reduction, where you apply, one characteristic of one person and apply it to the whole. ComicsGate does not need to engage with trolls. Just block all of them. And if you block somebody on mistake, they can talk to you on Telegram or Discord and get you to unblock them. It's not such a big deal. The thing is, don't try to meet in the middle with the left wing. You're not going to be all things to all people. By that I mean, ComicsGate is in existence because of hatred from the toxic alt-left. It's a collection of right-of-center people. And so there's a big collection in ComicsGate who are to the further right. And that's awesome. I mean, that's, everyone needs representation. Like, the right wasn't getting it in mainstream comics. That's how ComicsGate got created. If you're trying to reach out to the left wing and be all things to all people, you're going to end up under the control of the SJWs. It's just this cycle of appeasement. You appease SJWs, you slowly let them in, they get control over you, they get pivot points. The best thing is, use that flamethrower and just keep them out, because otherwise you're going to kick you out of the group that you've always had a hand in. SJWs are parasites. You absolutely must exclude them right from the start. You're not going to be able to please everybody. I know there's people who are selling comics, and they want to reach across the aisle to sell to as many people as possible. You're just not going to be able to do that. Otherwise, they're going to ask you for concessions, and you need to placate them here and there. And next thing you know, it's like you start giving away these little... You start reneging on your principles, and next thing you know, it's like, oh, you're trying to be all things to all people. You don't have any principles anymore. If somebody's interested in ComicsGate, they're probably already going to be in the YouTube section. And yeah, definitely we need to grow the audience so people who want to sell comics can sell comics to this audience. But you got to accept that you're not going to reach everyone. This guy who was arguing, the yellow shirt guy who was arguing with some people in ComicsGate, I kind of got the feeling he was to the left of the bell curve. He just kind of wants attention for himself. That's mostly what Twitter is all about, is people just need some kind of serotonin boost. You don't need to be nice to people and try to engage with people as adults when you can clearly go through their tweet history. Like, you read the last 6 tweets this guy posted, and you realize, like, oh yeah, he's not trying to be an adult. There's no point in trying to reach across the aisle to him. blocking people takes the oxygen out of the room. It takes the oxygen out of that engine. Just like nip things in the bud with these people. Block all these people. Just go through. There's, probably if you went through, I'm not saying use a block list, block them individually, but you could spend a few minutes every day, and it's like you block it, like a few thousand of these SJWs, like these whack job SJWs. Like, these are kids, they don't know what's going on. This guy is just parodying information about CG. He has no idea what he's talking about. You're not losing anything. He's not gonna. And if eventually he comes around and changes his mind, well, he can hook you up. He can super chat you on a YouTube live stream and ask you to unblock him. It's like, oh, okay, fine. It's, if you're willing to spend $2 to get unblocked, it's like, I could see where that would go. Anyway, like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys all next episode.